All right, we'll get going. Thanks for coming, everyone. Before I introduce Todd, just a couple of housekeeping things. So this is the last of the I2 Passport events that are ours. So obviously SVIC is going forward, so hopefully those of you who submitted have already submitted. And there'll be some more from that. So.
Is the SVIC, Wild Catalyst as well?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was just testing. Thursday night is the Wild Catalyst seminar. That's right here, so thank you for that. And obviously up until, it's really the Sunday of after Thanksgiving, so you can still use Makerspace, the co-working space, things like that. So that goes all the way through. And then for clarification, so that it ends on December 4th, Monday, probably be right before the Entrepreneurship Club meeting, will be the first semester awards. So we have that, and then for those of you that are here second semester, that will automatically happen. Like you don't have to re-register for I2 Passport. That automatically continues you for both the full year, and then the semester award will actually reset to 0. So everybody goes back to 0 and has a chance to win the prizes just for second semester. So I'll send out an email later this week as part of the update to explain that a little bit more. But I know there are a bunch of questions. It was a great question. So tonight, really excited to have Todd, who I met actually just about 2 years ago to the day. I started here 2 years ago this week. Class of 03 from UNH. Serial entrepreneur, currently is co-founder and principal of Leading Edge Design Group, which does energy management. I'll let him explain more exactly what it does. But a wide range. They have offices outside of Hanover in Enfield, and also down in Joburg in South Africa. He is also an investor, partner, supporter of a number of different startups. The one I actually saw last year was Hidden Collective, which is I actually think they should have won. That was out at Accelerate New Hampshire, or maybe it was the spring. I forget which. Spring. As part of the Accelerate NH program. And they basically support small-scale outdoor manufacturers, so backpacks or anything that's outdoor, as opposed to having to sell to EMS or LL Bean. It's almost like a cooperative that allows you to find these really cool makers of this outdoor gear. Their presentation was so amazing, and that I found out that Todd actually had coached them, so that was part of the reason why he's here as well. Todd sits on the Dean's Advisory Council at Paul College, and just well-rounded. A couple other things. He's judged for Holloway in the Bud Albin rounds for that. And in 2012, he won the Under 30 CEO Award for a top young entrepreneur out of Boston. So tonight's really neat, obviously very topical, not only for SVIC that's coming up, but also as you think about your ideas, how do you talk to other people about them? How do you talk to potential investors? And then as we head into second semester for Holloway. So with that, I'll turn it over to Todd.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. Evening, everyone. So I think before we get started, first, thanks, Ian, for having me. I'm excited to be here. Really excited about the program. As Ian said, I'm part of the advisory board at the Paul College. So just the amount of programs that we have here today is something I'm really proud to be part of. So excited to be here with you tonight. Before we start, I'm just curious, sort of show of hands, who here is doing social venture? Who's doing SVIC? Fair number of you. Okay, awesome, great. And those that are doing social venture, you prepared to maybe do a little bit of your company pitch tonight? Is that possible? Awesome, okay. And for everyone else that's not, you got the information in advance, right, about how we'll augment the activity to work with people who aren't doing social venture. Awesome, okay. So tonight, we're going to talk a lot about something that, first is really close to my heart, because I think that it's, whether we're talking about pitching a company, like you might be doing a social venture, or just being an employee at an organization, I think that effective presentation skills, no matter your discipline, whether you're in business, whether you're in engineering, computer science, whatever you are, effective presentation skills are something that will enable you to be successful. Because no matter what discipline you're in, the need to communicate effectively is something that I think, especially in today's business climate, is really critical to your success. I think that'll be true, obviously, both academically and true in your professional career. How many of you here are, just sort of show of hands, who here is Paul College So the majority, okay. Anyone like engineering or computer science? Okay, awesome. So we got a mix. That's fantastic. Okay, so intent tonight is, I want to give you about 20 minutes or so of information, right, and suggestions on your pitch, and then the majority of it will obviously to be focused on your pitch in particular and try to give you some feedback. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can talk about the way to craft a presentation or a pitch for your company. And I think if you look up that information online, you're going to find a lot of different feedback on the right way to craft a story, the right way to build a presentation. So tonight, with the time that we have, I wanted to focus on, I think, one aspect of giving a pitch or a presentation, and to give you some tactical examples, hopefully some takeaways you can take back with you and incorporate either into your presentation at SVIC or just into your academic work, and then hopefully your professional work, beyond that. So to do that, let's just define, I think there's a difference between the content of your presentation and then the delivery of your presentation, right? And if you think about it, like let's take social venture as an example. You guys are here at University of New Hampshire. You all in this room are here because you're motivated, right? You're bright. And if you enter in a competition like social venture, what you have to expect is that all of the competition, all of those teams are going to be bright and motivated, right? They're going to have thought through their content. They're going to have good ideas. So that becomes the baseline, right? So in many ways, I think that because you spent so much time developing your content, whether it's for a pitch competition, whether it's for a project, at some point that content becomes fixed, right? You can only change that content so much. So when you're surrounded by either a classroom of people that are your peers, whether you're surrounded by people in a competition, the way in which you can change is you can change your delivery, right? You can change how your presentation is delivered, how your company and message is communicated, and that is really what will separate you from everyone else. So the fact that you're here, I give you a lot of credit because I think what hopefully we'll give you today is, again, some ways in which you can think about delivering a presentation or some ways in which you can prepare for a presentation a little bit differently. And I think that that's the real key here, right? Is that there's always going to be the ability to have great content, but it's the preparation of how you're going to deliver that content is what really will make your presentation shine. So how do we do that, right? I think the first thing tonight is that we need to focus on you. Because when you're giving a presentation, I think the most important thing to remember is that you are the star of that show, right? You as the presenter are the one that needs to communicate that message and be the star of that presentation. And that means that the slides aren't the star of the presentation, that the business concept isn't the star of the presentation. It means that you are, right? And so I think that when you think about giving a presentation, there are a lot of ideas about how you should conduct yourself, how you can sort of work physically to give the right presentation. But what I think is important, and what we want to remember tonight is that the best thing that you can do to start with is to just understand who you are and be yourself, right? Because there are a lot of different effective ways to give a presentation, right? There is no universal presentation methodology. And that's because there's no universal personality, right? You all here are different. And you're here, you're at a school that's like the University of New Hampshire because you have unique things to offer. And so embracing those things is going to be the first step, I think, in helping you deliver a great presentation, right? So if you think about yourself and you think about different ways presentations can be delivered, you might be someone that is very emphatic, right? And if you've ever seen a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk speak, he is really physical, right? He's really in your face. He spits and he swears and he slams his hands on his fists like this, and he's all over the stage. He's really, really animated. And that is an effective way to give a presentation if that is consistent with your personality. But if that's not who you are, you might be more cerebral, right? You might be someone that when you think about an idea or you are communicating a concept, you're doing that in a more calculated way. And that is just as an effective way to deliver a presentation as it is to be animated. Or it might be funny, which is always great, right? You hear a lot that injecting humor into a presentation is a great way to sort of break the ice. And I think that's true if you're funny, right? So, if you try to inject humor into a presentation, but you're not funny, that's distracting, right? If you are trying to force yourself to be really physical and animated and emphatic, that also is very distracting. Okay, so I think if I can emphasize anything tonight as you think about your presentations at SVIC, again, in your academic career, it's that you can give yourself the permission to be who you are, right? Because if anything, I think what is most clear and sort of speaks the loudest in a presentation is presenters who are authentic, right? I'm sure Ian will tell you the same thing. As you watch a lot of pitches, you watch a lot of different companies present, those people that are authentic to who they are the ones that resonate the most. Okay, so be you, right? I mean, I think it's step one of giving a good presentation, just be willing to be who you are, right? And give yourself the permission to just be authentic, okay? Easy, right? So we've established we want to be who we are, right? That's the first step. The second step, as I mentioned, is work, right? The preparation for the presentation is really key to being able to develop an effective delivery method of that presentation. And you know, I think a presentation is an art form, right? And you know, if you think about great artists, you know, how many hours did Hendrix play guitar or did, you know, Picasso paint? You know, you don't have to be the Picasso of presentations, but it gives you some perspective. If you want to be great at something, and if you want to win a competition, if you want to be great in your professional career at communicating and delivering presentations, you have to put the work in to do that. And that's why first you deserve the credit for being here because you're starting the process of doing that work. But in the practicing for your presentation, that's really where the magic happens. So what we hope to do here is talk about some unique ways you can practice that have helped me to take presentations, I think, up a notch. The good news for you guys is that I think you have the key, the magic ingredient to taking your presentations from good to great. You all have that, and it sits in your pocket, right? Does everyone here have a phone with a recording device? Anyone not have a phone with a recording device? Yeah, I guess that would be the shocking part, right? Okay, so the best advice that was ever given to me that I was very skeptical of, and I'll talk about what I learned in a minute, is to record yourself giving a presentation. And the reason that's so important is that, like I said, we're here at a competitive university. You're going to be in a competitive competition. Everybody practices, right? Everybody's got good content. Everybody practices, right? So that becomes the baseline. So how do you make yourself stand out? And the way to do that is to actually watch yourself through the viewer's eyes, right? Through the judge's eyes, and to actually see how you deliver the presentation. Because what's going to make you stand out is the way in which you communicate your message, not with the content that's on your slides. So when you record yourself, some magical stuff happens, right? The first thing is you see what your nervous habits are. And I promise everyone has them, right? So when you watch yourself on video, it's a little bit scary sometimes because you see what you do when you're nervous. And people do funny things, right? You get nervous, right? And your heart starts beating a little faster, your body temperature rises, you get anxious. And when you feel that way, you start doing really unnatural stuff with your body, okay? So that's the first thing is you'll notice what those habits are. The second thing, and I think this is really important when you're in especially a competition like SVIC, you're trying to communicate a message in a short amount of time, is you'll notice where you have uncertainty in your delivery. And when we're putting together a presentation or we're doing a company pitch, we all have those areas where we feel like we're maybe stretching the research a little bit, or we're just not sure if this point's going to come across. And when you watch yourself delivering that message, what you're going to see is that your body language changes a little bit. Either your voice drops down, you shrug, you change the way you deliver a message when you're uncertain about it. So it helps you identify those points, because as a user or as a viewer of presentations, that's something that's really perceptible. And the last thing I think that's really important is that you will learn your cadence. And what I mean by that is, communicating a message effectively requires inflection in your voice, right? Sort of that dramatic pause, that rise in your voice, or maybe a more sincere delivery of a message if you're talking about something important. And back to what happens when we get nervous, right? Our heart starts beating fast, right? Our body temperature rises. What typically happens, and I'll say judging Holloway for many years, what I always see happens is that you've memorized this content, right? And what happens is you fall back to just reciting this content. You do it at a very even speed. It just goes without any inflection, and it goes at a very consistent pace. And that is a problem because you're not emphasizing the points that you really want to emphasize in that way. So you learn all these things from recording. And it was a really remarkable experience for me to first do this, because when it was first suggested to me, I was pretty skeptical. I thought I was doing a pretty good job of giving presentations, right? I thought I did it pretty well in school for clients. But I wanted to get better. I was presenting at a conference, I had a colleague record me, and on the plane home, I watched it, and oh my God, I was astounded, right? Because I watched myself delivering this presentation. It was something I was really passionate about. But what happened when I got so passionate is I was working across the stage, and I was like moving my hands like this, like a boxer. And I was pointing to the slides. I was all over the place. And I watched it over and over. I said, oh my God, that is distracting, right? So it really, although I felt like I did a pretty good job when that presentation was over, I even got some nice compliments on it. When I went back and watched it, I said, wow, that took away from what I was trying to accomplish. That really detracted, I felt like, from the message. And especially when I was trying to make a really important point, to me, that was so distracting. I still watch that video. I probably watched it 100 times, right? So I share that with you because I think it's a step that a lot of people aren't willing to take. It seems unnatural a little bit to record yourself, but if you want to really do a great job in your presentation, practicing will only get you 50% of the way there, right? And I mean that, 50%. Right? Because what happens when you practice over and over is you just memorize, right? You're memorizing content and you're just saying it over and over and over, and that's not delivering content. And when you watch yourself, that's when you'll notice the difference. So we'll get to give you some feedback on some of those points tonight, but the best tool I can give you when you leave here today, as you're preparing for any presentation, is to record yourself, okay? So, one thing that is pretty consistent that I've seen, first that I've experienced myself, that I see in presentations is that when people get nervous, they don't know what to do with their hands, right? So a lot of people put their hands in their pockets. People do weird stuff with their hands in their presentations. Get their hands in their pockets, or strange things happen when we're nervous. And so you'll notice these things on video, but I want to give you some examples, I think, of tips that have been given to me that have been helpful on what to do with your hands when you're nervous. And look, it's unnatural a little bit to stand up there in front of a crowd and deliver a presentation, especially if it's something that you're not used to doing. So here are a few tips, and they might seem strange, but I encourage you to try them in your rehearsal, because I think you'll find that you have a comfort level with your body language, right? And because when we're not paying attention to our body language, that's when it starts getting distracting, okay? So the first hand placement, I think was not pioneered, but was made most famous by Steve Jobs, who at all the Apple pitches, or product releases, you'd see him do it, and that's the hold the basketball. Right? So if you go back and watch an Apple product release and you see Steve Jobs pitch, when he's talking about something, and he's an intense guy, but when he's talking about something intense, he's got that basketball, right? And he is focused, he is intent on delivering that message. And you watch him do it and say, wow, that really is effective, right? So that's the first one, okay? Second one that I think is really effective is the palms up. And I think there's a nuance to this because, and I can say this, confidently, my wife is Italian. And so when we have family gatherings, I see the palms up, but it's like this, right? It's like, what do you mean, right? So there's a difference in how you do palms up. But I think it's a really effective way. We had Elon Musk up on the slides before. If you see him present, he uses palms up a lot because he's someone that poses a lot of questions, right? Like, why are we doing this? Why don't we have an answer to this problem? Why are we thinking about it this way? Right? And it's amazing how a subtle hand gesture, right, or hand position can emphasize your message. All right? So that's palms up. The third one that I personally like a lot too, people call the soft pyramid, right? And what I like about this is that when I'm delivering a presentation, I like to feel grounded, right, and connected to myself and the content. And the fact of actually having your fingers touching each other sounds strange, but actually making contact with each other, it gives you a feeling of grounded. Try it out. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it, right? Put your fingers together, it just makes you feel a little bit grounded, right? And so when you're standing on stage especially, when you have a tendency to sway side to side or walk around a lot, I think putting your fingers together, for me, it gives me the sort of reminder that it's okay to be still. And being still when you're delivering a presentation, I think is something that's really effective. Okay? So there's 3 techniques to think about. If you're really brave, you can try the Bill Clinton. I don't see a lot of people do this effectively, but if that's you, you can do Bill Clinton. Okay? So 3 hand placements. All right? So we've talked about being yourself. I think that's so important. We've talked a little bit about some techniques on how to prepare. The third step on delivering an effective presentation are slides, right? How do you build slides that are going to put you in the best position to deliver a successful presentation? And I think we need to go back to what we talked about at the beginning, and that is that the star of the presentation is you. All right, that is the most important thing I think to remember here. The slides that you create are meant to support you as the star of the presentation. All right, they are not meant to be the star of the presentation, and that's a big difference. A lot of people, when they're going to do a pitch competition, when they're getting a presentation ready for a class, they make their slides first, and that's okay. For me, I make my slides last. So what I like to do is actually I write out my outline for what I want to say, and then focus on how I want to say it. Where are the points? Where are the big ideas? Where are the big messages? What do I need to say? And then I work to build the slides to enhance that message. All right? So there's some rules about slides. And the first and most important is that your slides should support your narrative. They should not tell your narrative. And there's a huge difference, right? The most important thing is you, and you are the one delivering that content with your voice. The content isn't delivered on your slides in written form. Because every time the content that has to be viewed is on the slides, it distracts from you as the star of that show. And I think it distracts from the quality of the presentation. So build your slides in a way that support your narrative. They don't tell the narrative. To do that, you have to minimize bullet points. I think this is something you'll hear from everyone, and you'll see, and anytime you read effective presentations, 3 bullet points max on a slide is my rule, right? I like to have big font and 3 bullet points max, okay? And then the last piece is that your slides, in my opinion, should emphasize your cadence. And what I mean by that is don't put up a slide with 3 bullet points if you're only ready to talk about bullet point number 1, right? Use the animation in your slides, or just use multiple slides to give your slides the ability to support that story that you're telling. Again, if you put all 3 points up, then that your eye as a viewer gets drawn to the slide and away from you as a presenter. So we're trying to make an impact with our slides. That's the idea. And there's a huge difference between making an impact with a slide like this or making an impact with a slide like this, right? You're giving the same message, but you're doing it in a totally different way. And that's a really important distinction, okay? So, like I said, when we think about slides, the main takeaway for me is you tell the story during a presentation, and your slides support that story, okay? So, I thought to maybe give you an example of what that means, Ian mentioned a company that I'm involved with called Hidden Collective. And what I thought I'd do is I'd give you our first 30 seconds of our pitch and the slides that go along with that. And we can kind of compare and contrast, like, what are 2 different ways to do it. All right? Sound good? Okay. At Hidden Collective, we are changing the way outdoor goods are discovered and sold. You're probably not aware that each year, Americans spend 60% more on bicycling gear and trips than they do on airline tickets and fees. The outdoor industry today is an unknown economic giant. But this $120 billion per year industry has a significant problem. Choice. Okay, so that's our first 3-slide, 30-second pitch, right? These slides were built in a way to enhance our narrative, right? We thought about what's that story we want to tell? What's our market? What's the problem, right? There's a big industry and we think there's a problem with that industry, and that problem is choice. So we worked these slides and, like I said, the cadence of those slides to support our narrative. If you did it in the opposite order, you might have ended up with something like this, right? We're Hidden Collective. Outdoor industry today is a $120 billion industry, and it has a huge problem, and that problem is choice. No one's paying attention to that message as I'm saying it in that way. Everyone is reading the slides, right? So it's a big difference. Now, I'm maybe someone that's on the extreme of slides, I like one-word slides, or one-graph slides. So I think there's a happy medium there. But the takeaway, like I said, is focus on your story first. What do you want to say that's really impactful? What points do you really want to get across? And then build slides in a way that enhance that story. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so when I prepare for a presentation, I want to give you what my personal timeline is in hopes that might help you. So the first thing for me is I like to have slides done about 3 weeks in advance, right? And remember, for me, having slides on 3 weeks is I've thought about the story, right? That story I want to tell, sort of written that out in a written outline, and then I start to build the slides in a way that support that outline, okay? Then about a couple weeks out, I like to have a draft presentation, and what I mean by that is being off book. My cousin's an actor, and I just learned what this term off book means, which means you know the line, so I'm stealing it. I thought that was exciting. So 2 weeks out, I like to have the content committed to memory. And the reason that's important is because I want to spend those last 2 weeks focusing on the content delivery, right? I need to know it and have it committed to memory so I can then focus on how can I change how I'm expressing and delivering that content in a way that's going to make it most impactful, okay? About a week and a half out, that's when I start the recording process. So by the time I start recording, what I want to do is feel comfortable with the presentation content. So I want to have my slides and the presentation in a place where I feel like I'm delivering it in a way that's realistic with how I would deliver it on the day of the presentation. And so that gives me some time to look at that recording, review it, and then start to make tweaks to how I want to change that to make the presentation most effective. I think, like I said, what you get out of recording are tweaks. It's like going through your presentation with a scalpel and being willing to make those small changes. But those last 15% of changes are what have the biggest impact, okay? So that's about a week and a half out. And then for me, about 3 days up, I do what I consider a final practice. And for me, that's rhythm, right? So if you think about, I like sports analogies. So if you're a golfer, but as you're warming up and you're putting, putting is all rhythm. Or shooting foul shots, right? It's all rhythm. And for me, that's what a presentation is, because your mind only has so much capacity to just hammer through content and practice your presentation 400 times in the last 3 days leading your presentation. I personally don't do that. And why I think preparation is important is that if you have it committed to memory 2 weeks in advance, then you're just refining. Then it's just rhythm. And like I said, I'll use Holloway as an example. It is a night and day difference between the people that you saw cramming to get content into their presentation the night before, between the people that sort of work through a preparation like this. Those are the people that are really comfortable on stage, and those are the people that are delivering a message, delivering content in a really impactful way. Okay, so excited to get into some activity, but first, does anyone have questions, right? Specific to your own presentation or presentation or strategies in general? Yeah. If you don't mind, before you, just tell me your name so I can.
Nikki.
Nikki, great.
What are your thoughts on putting video clips into a presentation? Is it good or bad?
Great question, Nikki. So I think that video is effective, but I think the balance that you want to make is the length of the video and the length of your presentation, right? So, like I said, in your presentation, you should be the star. So you shouldn't use the video as a mechanism to tell the whole story. I think a video is a compelling way to maybe set the stage for your story or to emphasize a point, but don't use it as the way to tell your whole story. Does that make sense? All right, you're the star, right? So use that video to set the tone. I think it's really great for tone because you have music and you have scenery. It's a great way to set tone that you can capitalize on, but just don't make it be the whole content of the presentation. That make sense? It's a great question, Nikki. Yes, sir.
I was noticing with your slides, you had a two-tone kind of style all the way through, where you have one solid color and then one background color.
Yep.
What is your thoughts on, like, some presentations will have like a colorful background and then a similarly colored slide? Is that too attention grabbing, or is that still probably acceptable?
Yeah. So for me, I think that's preference. So if we go back to, be who you are up there, and your slides reflect that. Okay, so if you either have a product or you have a personality that is really supported by more colorful and animated slides, I think that's okay. I think as long as it doesn't get too colorful, right? So I think there's just a spectrum where it becomes distracting. And what I would say is the more colorful your slides become, the more succinct and simple your bullet points have to be, right? So, if you have a lot of colors and then a lot of written content, it's difficult to follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that, again, color sort of can reflect your personality or the personality of your company or your product idea, whatever that might be. And I think that's great. That's a differentiator. Just be careful in how much.
Yeah, okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Great question. And I didn't catch your name, sorry.
Ethan. Sorry,
Ethan, great. No problem, Ethan. All right, great. Thank you. What other questions does anyone have? Yes, sir.
It's Dylan.
Dylan.
So I guess two questions. First, if you could just sort of very quickly go over the hand gestures again.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other question was, I know a lot of presenters will drink water during presentations, not only to just kind of like, keep their mouth nice and moist, make sure that your throat's not hurting or whatever, but also kind of as an accentuator between points to kind of like let something sink in, like you take a drink of water or whatever. Sort of like, what are your thoughts on like things like that? Like, can they be distracting? Like, can you try to mitigate that?
Good question, Dylan. Let me answer that question first, and then we'll go over hand gestures, okay? So, I think the key is sort of similar to Nikki's question with water. It should be relative to the length of your pitch. Okay, so my personal feeling would be if you have a 5-minute pitch and you got to take a water break after 2 minutes, that's probably distracting, right? Because you're trying to maximize your content. If you have an hour pitch, right, and you're delivering a lot of content, I think that's okay. The way in which you do it, I think if it's done in a calculated way, is really smart. Anyone watch the show The Voice? Yeah, okay. So if you watch The Voice, they when they're singing, they talk about finding moments in a song to take a breath if you're going to sing a high note, right? And I think that's similar to what you're saying here, Dylan, is that if you have a calculated time in which you're going to take a sip of water, I think that's okay. But in the type of competitions we're talking about, like for social venture and such, I think that would be something that would be ineffective in a short amount of time. Once you stretch out to about a half hour, yeah, I think that's okay and should be done in a calculated way, as you mentioned, right? Good, that's a great question. Okay, so hand gestures, let me answer that real quick, and then, so 3 hand gestures that I personally like. There's a lot out there, so these aren't the only ones. The first is hold the basketball, right? So it's sort of like elbows in, basketball in the hands, and I think people that do this well use it when they're talking about making an intent, they're focused, right? Really make an intent point. Second is palms up. And I personally like this is to ask the why, the big questions, the why. Why are we doing this, right? And then the third is that, I call it soft pyramid, right? So hands together. And I like to use this when I'm feeling the need to move, because a lot of times people, you watch them, they move across the stage. And if you're giving a keynote presentation for an hour, that's good. You can't stay stationary. But if you're giving a 5-minute pitch, you should be, in my opinion, focused without a lot of movement across the stage. In a way in which I like to ground myself is just to use that position. Okay, great questions, Dylan. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you kind of just went over it, but you mentioned about movement and how you said just kind of staying still. I've also had a lot of people say, you kind of want to refrain from just having like bricks on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of said like a shorter presentation that might be more effective compared to a longer one, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a great question. What was your name? Sorry.
Jamie. Sorry.
Jamie, yeah, no problem. So I think the most important thing is you gotta be you, right? So if you are someone that's very energetic and has a lot of movement, that's okay, but the reason that you should record yourself is because you'll be able to see if it's too much movement. A ton of movement in 5 minutes is distracting. So I don't think there's any problem with moving around the stage, but doing it in sort of a small circle, right, as opposed to pacing the stage is very different. And people that are really energetic, when they get nervous, they talk in their points like this, right? And they come over and you feel like you're making eye contact the whole time, right? And you think you're doing a great job, and you are, but watching someone pace across the stage is like, as an observer, is distracting. Okay, so I think movement is totally fine. Even, like I said, hand movement is okay. All those things are okay if that's who you are, right? Don't force yourself to do that. If that's who you are, that's great. That's why I think the recording is so important, because if you see yourself move, you'll say, oh man, like that's a lot. Or, man, I look like a stiff up there. Let me move around a little bit. That's okay too, right? So be consistent with who you are, right? Great question.
Thank you.
Of course. Mr. Grant.
Talk about that moment where you're nervous. So besides the hand gesture, there's that 30 seconds before, no matter how well you know it, that anxiety or the adrenaline. How do you take that first step?
That's a great question. So I think it's a misconception that people that present a lot don't get nervous, because at least for me, and I think a lot of people I know that present a lot, if you care about the presentation you're giving and you want to do a good job, you get nervous. Right? And so that's totally natural. So that's the first thing, is to know that it's natural, right? I used to have this thing where my right leg would shake right before I'd present, right? And it was the weirdest thing. I was like, how the hell am I going to get this thing to stop shaking? There's a couple things for me, Ian, right? The first is, so I'm someone that believes in a mindfulness practice, right? So I'm a deep breath kind of guy before I go on stage. So how I personally do that, and if it helps you, I hope it does. When you take a deep breath, right? And if everyone sits up straight, I can show you how this works. When you take a deep breath, there's a difference between breathing into your chest, right? So if you watch my breath and I'm breathing in my chest, like to my lungs expand, right? So that's one way to take a breath. That's a shallow breath, right? It's different if you think about when you're breathing, breathe in through your nose and into your stomach, almost like you're feeling bloated, right? So when I take a deep breath, I want my stomach to expand, and then I let it out. So my personal breathing, I do 4 counts in through my nose and 7 counts out. And I think the out is really important, because when you count to 7 going out, you typically breathe out in like 3 seconds. And so when you're extending it, it's like you're just letting that little bit melt away, right? So the specific answers to your question, Ian, the first are, for me, breathing I think is really important. The second thing is, before I typically go on any presentation, I always have my notes that have like my top 5 bullet points, right? What is the message? What are the key points of this message? Because you have to revert back to something, and this has happened to me where I've totally effed up the slides, and you want to get back to one key message, right? Or 2 key messages. Those are ingrained in your mind. If that's the last thing you see before you walk on the stage, you can always fall back to that. So those are my 2 things, and like I said, the hand gesture for me, those are really important. The last thing I'll say is I also like eye contact. A lot of people, when you are in a crowd, get worried about making eye contact, but that's a way in which people are engaged, and that fuels you. So I encourage eye contact if you're comfortable doing it. So great question, Ian. Yeah. Other questions? Dylan.
Are there any things that you do, and so it sort of depends on your audience, of course, but if you notice that maybe your audience is starting to lose attention or might be like getting just distracted, are there any things that like you do as a presenter that can kind of, just kind of recapture the audience in the event that they kind of start drifting away or whatever?
Yeah, great question. This has definitely happened to me, right? And so the reason that I think for me, to go back to something I said, that I like to build the slides around the story that I want to tell, is because when you're building slides in that way, you always have sort of intermittently scheduled impact points, right? And so it's natural that happens. And I think what I like to do is I know that something I feel like big is coming, right? And so if I know 2 slides down that that's coming, you want to just, again, give yourself the confidence or the knowledge that you have something important coming, and then you can make an inflection point or a dramatic pause, right? So if you think about like the hidden collective pitch, that choice is a big thing to us. And even that's early on in the presentation, I know that's something that's coming. So I say like, this is a big problem, right? And I want to say that emphatically, and then that dramatic pause before I come into the next slide. So to me, that's why the slides are so, impactful slides are so important, because a lot of times what happens is people build, high impact slides at the beginning and then a ton of data on the back, and man, that gets really boring, right? And so if you spread out your big points, or use the data to emphasize your big points, then you got something that's coming. You're going to hit them with something good, right, in a couple slides. It's a great question, Dylan, because it happens, but the way in which you structure your presentation will help you through that, all right? Great question. Other questions? These are all awesome questions, guys. Yeah, Ethan.
Kind of on that point, should you try to structure your rhythm so that if you have a point that you really, really want to hit home, that you actually lower, I don't want to say lower the enthusiasm, but you calm it down a little so that when it goes back up, it hits harder? Or do you want to kind of just keep it always enthusiastic and then just bump it up even more on that point? So
to me, I know this probably sounds repetitive, but I think that depends on your personality, right? Yeah. So people that can, so go back to a guy like Gary Vee, right? If you've ever watched him, man, he's at a 10 at all times, right? And so if you can work at a 10 through your whole presentation, right, and then go to an 11, that's okay. I think that works. But for a lot of people, and I think for people that are first starting out in presentations, you are more calculated, right? And you're a little more cerebral. And so I think that it does work well to know if you got a couple great points that you're sort of bringing the audience along through those points, and then you're coming with what you think is really important. I think the most, the most critical thing is just it should be natural for you, right? And so you shouldn't try to don't feel like you have to oversell it or build drama in an unnatural way. Just if you tell the story in the right way, that's enough. Because people, like at Social Venture, the judges there that are listening, right? They're there listening intently. They want to hear that story. They're waiting for that message. So just be comfortable that you've crafted the message and that you're going to deliver it to it in a way that makes sense. All right? So, because it's a great question, though. Anyone else? Okay. Excellent. So, what we're going to do next is a little practice. Okay? So, what I'd like to show of hands again, who's doing Social Venture? Okay? A few people doing Social Venture. Okay. And everyone that's doing Social Venture, are you doing it individually? Are there any Social Venture teams that are here? Yes.
I'm with you with the JV.
This fine young man up here. Okay. Great. Okay. So what I think we should do, right, is first for the Social Venture team that's together, and then Dylan and Ethan, you're both got.
I actually have a team, but my partner couldn't be here.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So did everyone receive the email in advance of this of just, if you're not doing Social Venture, just what the activity is?
If you RSVP'd on Eventbrite, you would have gotten the email
last
night.
If you didn't, that's okay, right? Okay. So here's how this is going to work, right? The people that are doing Social Venture, we're going to you're going to give 5 minutes of your pitch, right? The people that aren't, we'll have the Social Venture people go first, because the people that aren't, the activity that we'll do to help you practice is what I want you to think about. And if you want to do one slide, if you want to do 2 slides, I think that's great, is you want to craft a story around why should someone come to school at UNH. We can write these down somewhere if we need to. We got a whiteboard marker somewhere?
Yeah,
Hit me with it, Ethan. Okay, so what we want to do is let's come up with an easy topic, something that all you know, right? So here's topic number 1. Why choose UNH? Okay, that's question 1. 2, why buy an iPhone? Or a Galaxy or whatever you have and you like. What was number 3, Ian? Do you remember?
Season.
What was it?
Season.
Oh yeah, thank you, Dylan. Yeah. Whoops. What is your favorite season? Or why is it the best season? Why is X your favorite season? Okay, so the purpose here is to get you used to thinking about a big idea and being able to sell it in a simple way. So if you go back to like the 3 slides from Hidden Collective, right? What we tried to do is just take one big idea and say, here's the first reason why we think you should think about our company. So if it's, what's your favorite season, and your favorite season is summer, right? What I want you to think about is summer is, there are 4 seasons in every year. The reason that summer is the best is because of X, Y, Z, right? What are those key points, okay? So the way that we're gonna break it up, if we can, social venture teams, why don't you come just up to the front because you guys are gonna go first, okay? And then people that wanna participate in the activity, you guys will go after social venture. And I really encourage you to do it because it gets you used to sort of that idea of telling a story no matter what that story is. Okay, you can do it in a team if you want. Encourage you to do it individually because it really gets you used to standing up there and telling a story. Okay? Deal? All right, so let's sort of re-architect this. Anyone that's doing social venture, just come up to the front, right? And we'll set a time for you guys to go, an order for you guys to go. And then anyone that's not, I just want to come around and say hi. And we'll get you started after that. All right, everyone ready? Yeah? Awesome. Okay. I like to sit front and center, man. Sorry.
All right, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Dylan Mueller. I'm part of a team with Sriya Shah, who is not here tonight. And for our social venture innovation project, we came up with this program called the Explorers Map Program, or TEMP for short. Did you guys know that 89% of low-income first-generation students will leave college within 6 years without a degree? That was a pretty shocking stat that we learned of through the UNH Pathways program, which aims to solve this problem by matching students with mentors. So the program is open to any and all first-generation students, and they all can submit their resumes, and then they get matched with a mentor. And the goal with the mentor-mentee relationship is that you can give these students the resources they need to graduate college successfully. And so the problem that we're currently facing is that first generation students, they don't necessarily have the industry connections that they need to get to where they're trying to go, which is why they're trying to come to college to make these connections. But even more, lack the financial resources needed to get into college. We're all college students. We all know how expensive tuition is these days, and the price just keeps raising every year. And so we need sort of some support programs to give these first generation low-income students a fair chance, a fair shot. The biggest issue we found with UNH Pathways and other similar programs is that the reach is so small because this matching process is such a labor-intensive thing. And there's no sort of mainstream efficient way to do it. It severely limits the amount of students who can apply, because when you have when you have the certain amount of people that you do, it's hard to expand and add another 100 or 200 slots just because of how inefficient the matching process is. And so what we decided we would do to fix this is to create some sort of automated matching software. And so the goal with our software is to make matching more efficient, make matching more accurate, which will not only provide first generation students with a better mentor-mentee match, but will also allow the program to expand to much more students in the university. And so this is sort of the plan, our plan that we have. So the first step with our product is that you can create your form, and the form can be customized for any possible situation. But the idea is that you're sort of collecting information for both the mentors and the mentees. After you've created your own customized personal form, you can publish it. And when you publish the form, you get a unique URL, which you can email to all of the students and mentors interested in the program. The mentors and the mentees then fill out the form, and all the data is collected within the main program. Then the matching algorithm runs, which generates a top 3 suggestions of mentors for each mentee. And then finally, the mentee can go in and look at their top 3 suggested, and they can pick their favorite from there. So with this mainstream technique, more students can be matched, and they can be matched more accurately. Thank you.
Awesome. Dylan, nice work. First, hard to go first, so deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
So I think, what I want to do with everyone, right, is just, if I can give you just a couple key things to think about, okay? First, go to your slide number 2. So your slide number 2 is awesome, right? I mean, and this is something I didn't know. Like, wow, this is a huge number. This is a huge problem, right? So I think that, the way in which you start by telling the story with this sort of graphic, right, is a really compelling way to grab, the user's attention, right? So I think that that's great. And I think, the problem when you're introducing yourself, right, the problem statement is important to get to, right off. And then once you did that, if you go to slide number 3, the challenge then becomes you have a ton of content on the slide that's all really relevant, right? Like, think about all this stuff. There's not enough connections, there's no financial resources, there's no matching programs. Oh my God, there's so many problems, right? And you did a great job, I think, of telling why that's a problem. But when there's so much content on that slide, I keep reading this slide and not listening to you, right? So I think a simple change you could make to this is you could either use, take each bullet point and put it on an individual slide. So as you're getting to the financial resources, the lack of financial resources, that bullet point comes up, right? As why matching programs are inefficient, that bullet point comes up. Because like we were talking about, that's supporting your narrative, right? Right now, the story's being told on the slide, and that becomes distracting. Okay, and if you go down to the process, this, which I also think is great, right? Because I think it shows you've really thought through, how is this going to work, and in social venture, that's going to be really important, right? So for this piece, I'd give you the same feedback, right? Take this chart and break it up into one piece at a time, okay? Because you want to you're walking them through the process, okay? First thing is we got to create a form, right? And that's important, right? And then once that's done, and this is why that's important, and once that's done, then you can publish it. And the reason that we publish it is because we want to do these 5 things. But if you're stopping on each one of those points, it gives you the space, right? To tell, to really walk through that process and tell the story in a way that's going to make, the user listen. Sure. So I think, you take what is great content, in my opinion, and you just make small changes to it, the delivery of it is going to be really improved. So I love this idea. I think it's great. I think you have great content already. And I get that, this is just your first time talking about it, so don't, I think that you did a great job. And I think those small changes are going to take what a really big, talking about a big problem here, right? Those small changes are going to give you sort of the latitude to tell that story in a way that's really impactful. You're talking about a big problem here, it's lofty, right? So I think you make those small changes and that gives you some latitude to tell that story in a way that's really impactful, okay? Awesome job, man. Ian, any other feedback you want to add there?
I'm just going to, as you go up, I'm going to mic you up so that it's better for the videos.
All right, team Jamie, and I didn't get everyone else's name, sorry. Ashley?
Jessica.
And Jessica. All right, let's do it.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Nelson,
I'm Jessica Nelson. Ashley Floyd.
and this is Spot Us.
Saving lives from natural disasters through time-efficient rescue.
68,000 lives are lost each year to natural disasters. The current protocol through rescue is to go house to house searching for residents who are trapped, have passed away,
and other hazards such as gas leaks. When these first responders go house to house, they mark each house with an orange X indicating that has been checked and also what they have found inside it. As you can imagine, this is very time consuming when you check houses that have already been evacuated, don't currently have people living in them, or also checking for stuff like gas leaks when there's people stranded up the street that could still be saved.
Spot Us is an adhesive decal with a center reflective strip, as shown in this picture above, and it acts as a universal symbol that displays distress during a natural disaster. So right here, the adhesive decal is neon orange, so first responders can see during the day which houses need help. And the center reflective strip allows nighttime rescue as well. So to apply Spot Us, you apply it facing outwards on the inside of a window towards the driveway or the road. This allows first responders to see from the road which houses need help. Both day and night, Spot Us is visible 160 feet away. Spot Us also has a perforated center that allows first responders to remove half of the decal once they leave the house after rescuing victims. This allows secondary responders to know that this house has been already searched, saving time. So how do you use Spot Us? It is simple. First, you write the number of people that are currently inside of the house on the center reflective strip as shown in this picture. Next, simply remove the adhesive and apply to the inside of the window.
So I think it's pretty clear that in times of hurricanes, time is of the essence. So efficiency is a big issue that we're trying to address here. With Spot Us, it makes it easily visible that there are people in the house that need help. If we don't know if there's anyone in the house, then time can be wasted searching a house that is vacant. Like Jessica was saying, that the perforated adhesive will allow secondary search parties to know that the house has been rescued. The houses will still be rescued, and the search parties will be responsible for casualties and other hazards. Through saving time, we're going to be saving lives.
Awesome. So it is going to cost between 75 cents and $1 to manufacture this adhesive, and it would be sold for about $1.50. Now our primary customer will be FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We'll also have our secondary customer, which is insurance agencies, that will give this away to their customers as an added benefit for choosing their service. Now this adhesive decal would be first distributed through areas in eastern and southern coastal regions, as shown here in this black shaded area. And that area is chosen primarily because storms hit the most frequently and the hardest in these areas. Now, depending on FEMA's budget, they'll be able to move inwards to center regions of the U.S. and also western regions. Thank you. Keep your slides up if you can.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Just accidentally slipped in.
So great job, guys. I think for a really relevant topic, which I think is really important, and I think you guys have obviously really thought through a lot of the product and the delivery of it, which I think is great. So again, if I can focus on a few key points, I think if you go to your second slide, similar to what we talked about with Dylan's, right? You're talking about there's one huge point here. 68,000 people a year die because of natural disasters. That's an important part of why your product is important, okay? So to me, I think that needs to be that first big problem statement of why this product exists, right? People are dying, so we have to have a product, all right? Now,
That is a slide in itself.
so to me, like I said, to go back, right? I sort of lean towards really big statement slides, right? But I think when we're talking about solving a grand problem like we are in social venture, you have to make a big statement that is a big problem. And natural disasters and people dying is a big problem, right? So I think that is really the core of your message, right? Is that 68,000 people are dying a year. Right? That deserves its own its own showcase, right? And then I think your other points are obviously equally as important, right? But they can be delivered sort of in a secondary way to that first point, okay? If you go to the next slide, I think, and it's Jessica, right? So I think you did a great job delivering this. I think that it's a lot to do, a lot to describe on one slide. And as you're doing it, I kept being like, okay, there's a decal, there's a strip, there's a light. Like, it's trying to figure out like where are all those pieces. Okay, so again, the feedback I would give you here is that you know, like we talked about with Dylan, use the animation of your slide to emphasize your points. We've been talking about Apple a lot during this, so if you watch like one of their product releases, and if it's a new iPhone and the camera is 14 megapixel, it's a picture of it's got the camera on there with an arrow that says 14 megapixels, right? And then it says, 8-inch home screen, and there's an arrow pointing to the home screen, right? And I think you could apply a methodology like that here, where the product is really, this is a great idea, right? The product is the showcase, and then it starts popping up. There's a decal, right, with a reflective strip. And you point to it, right? This faces outwards. It's visible from the street, So use the cadence of the slide to emphasize the points, because I think everything you have here is important. But it's hard to follow when it's all on one slide, if that makes sense, right? Okay. And then I'd give you the same feedback on the next piece. Keep going. Yeah. So again, great that you guys have thought through this. I think you have two different pieces of content here, right? Like you started by talking about what it could be made and sold for. Obviously important. That deserves its own treatment, right? Hey, we know we can make this for this and we can sell it for this, right? That deserves its own showcase. And then the way in which you're going to distribute it, again, is a different message, right? And you have the map and all that is important. And I think you can make a big impact by showing that. We have some relevant things that just happened in Florida and Puerto Rico, So you can make a big impact with a visual that talks about, look at all the disasters, in this area. This is why it starts here. And again, that I think deserves its own treatment. So I think the feedback is very similar in that you guys have awesome content, great product idea, great problem and solution. And it's about when you're thinking about telling this story, make sure that the slides allow you to tell the story. Right now, the story is being told on the slides. All right, so that's the subtle change I would make. Okay, great work, guys. Awesome, awesome. All right, my man.
I didn't have time to throw together a presentation. I can spit it by air if you want.
I definitely want you to spit it by air. Yeah.
All right, let's go.
We good to go? All right, so our social venture is a company we're calling Waste Useful. Did you guys know that over 50% of sub-Saharan Africa is without electricity? 47% is without clean water, and 40% is without sanitary locations to even use the bathroom. And that sounds like staggering numbers. And when you look at the numbers of people who die, 200 people die a day in sub-Saharan Africa from just sanitary-related diseases. That number is astounding. In addition, there are long-term respiratory issues from cooking fires, because almost all of their food they cook is not over a stove like we do. They make a fire, all that smoke, they'll burn grass, they'll burn anything they can to try to get food to be able to cook. Their primary way of cleaning water and sanitizing it is boiling, which is in itself a good method. But when you boil water, it takes a long time, especially over an open fire. And the problem about that is all it takes is one drink out of contaminated water supply, and you could have boiled water for the past 3 years and it won't matter. You still caught the disease, and now your life's at risk. What we plan to do is we plan to franchise methane biodigesters. What those are devices which have two inputs, and those are different varieties of organic waste, whether that be food scraps, grass, anything that is organic and can break down, or fecal matter. Both of those you put into a digester with water, and then you just let it sit there, and similar to a cow's stomach, it will produce methane for free. That methane can then be harnessed and used for energy and electricity, which will bring it to the communities that have previously been without power. It will also bring heat and ability to cook food much faster, cleaner, easier. It's safer for the respiratory issues because the smoke itself is cleaner, and it will be a huge quality of life increase. In addition, it is entirely sustainable because the other byproduct of methane biodigestion is it actually releases incredibly fertile soil that just gets left behind. You put that back into your crops and it will help you produce more food after, which in turn feeds more food scraps, more organic matter, more fecal matter, and all that goes back into the digester, and the cycle continues. Now, if you look at that, you go, how are we going to do this system? There are many ideas out there to bring solar or other similar new technologies, but those are expensive and have only limited inputs when you bring them there. This methane biodigestion brings cleaner food. It brings an easier way to get clean water. It brings electricity. It solves hunger. It's rare you have something that hits so many levels and is also entirely free other than the initial cost. And as far as people go, how are you going to put all of this stuff into the digester to keep it running for that long in communities? For a community of 1,000 people, if they could bring 1 cup of waste a day, whether that be fecal, grass, anything that is just waste matter, and 1 cup a day for 1,000 people, you could produce 3 times the amount of methane they would all require to run their houses on electricity, to cook 3 meals a day, and to have methane-powered refrigerators. All if they brought 1 cup of waste. Farms themselves, 1 farm can produce enough for an entire community of 1,000 to never have to worry about that again. And in addition, for the public sanitation, many, many small villages in sub-Saharan Africa are stricken with the problem where there's no one that will clean where they leave their human waste. It just, open sewers are seen everywhere. If you can incentivize people to clean that up and bring it and put it into the digester, it will also improve public health. It will improve the quality of life. There is almost no drawback. And individually, to build one of these franchise digesters is between $10,000 and $25,000, which sounds like a lot, but then you realize you can sell 5 gallons of this stuff for $5 a piece. And for a community of 1,000, for the amount they will be using it, you can make back your investment within 3 to 5 years. So that's what our goal at Waste Useful is to empower the people of sub-Saharan Africa to bring money back into their community, to make it cleaner, and to save lives. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was on the fly, but
That was great. No, good. Great work being brave enough to deliver that on the fly, right? So I think first what I respect about that is you've thought a lot about the message, right? And now you can create a presentation that supports that message. So in listening to that message, I would say, obviously without seeing slides, what I would caution you to do is, similar to both groups that have gone, you have a big message, which is exciting, right? And I think that's an important problem to solve. There's also a lot of layers there. There's the cooking piece, there's the electricity piece, there's all of that, right? And you got to be careful on how you draw a line. Like when you're telling your story, you got to be careful on how you draw a line into all of these pieces and why they're important to the biodigester, right? Is that the right thing? Okay, so I think that, hunger is a big deal, right? Lack of electricity is a big deal. You maybe don't have to, go into all those individual points, right, as you're thinking about crafting the story, because I think in and of themselves, they're big impact points, okay? Right? So it's something to think about. The next piece I would say is when you're thinking about the messaging of the franchising, all right? When you're telling that story, as I heard it, it was difficult for me to tell, like, is this, you're trying to tell the story to a franchisee because you want them to buy it for $25,000, right?
Yeah, I should go into more detail.
Yeah, no, and it was just like, this was just the starting point, right? So when you're thinking about the story, right, the important part of the message is the problem that you're solving, especially with social venture, right? Here's the big problem, here's the solution that solves it. And then the mechanics of that, just make sure you separate the mechanics of that piece from that whole problem and solution, right? And whether it's franchised or not, that whole piece, I just make sure that that's clearly communicated, on the slides, right? So other than that, I think is great and great work doing it without slides. Awesome job, man. Okay. Any other takers?
Well, were we
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. I mean, any other takers?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right. It was Brian? All right, Brian. Yeah, absolutely. Man.
I think I left.
Come on up.
What is your favorite season? Hi, I'm Brian Lowe, and I'm here to convince you guys to pick winter as your favorite season. Why winter? You see, in winter, you burn more calories than you regularly would due to the cold. Now, this is important because obesity is a escalating pandemic. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, all of these are linked to obesity. Now, during winter, as you burn more calories due to the cold, due to every activity you perform is magnified by the cold, you lose more weight, okay, your energy goes down, and basically obesity is fought by winter. So next time when you look at your massive gains, at your loved ones who are being kept alive just a bit by winter fighting obesity, slowly but steadily, you can thank winter for that. On the other hand, politicians, media, philosophers, they've all struggled with the long-time problem of dealing with self-esteem. And self-esteem is really important because it's the basis of social acceptance. And in this age where we got mass shootings, body dysmorphia, a lot of problems caused by self-esteem issues, you can thank winter because winter is fair. Winter is cold. If you don't bundle up in really thick clothes that hide your figure, that prevent people from judging your body, you will die from freezing. And that's another reason you should thank winter. Because winter helps us keep these mass shooters at bay just a little bit, just by preventing them from going over the edge due to whatever concerns they might have with their body. And another thing about winter is that winter has rarity, especially in our age of climate change. You see, as climate change might increase the temperatures of the earth, what you find is that winter might not be here for very much longer, especially in the lower latitudes. So if you live in a region right now that's currently in winter, you might be owning property. You might be owning the future beachfront property, just as people inland of the tides right now might be owning the beachfront property of the future due to rising tides of global warming. So in light of global warming, you should greater appreciate winter because it's temporary. It could be temporary. It could be fragile in light of our changing earth. And with that, I implore you to pick winter as your favorite season.
Brian, nice work. Wow, went big there. I like it. So here's what I would say. I loved that you really took the challenge of crafting a story, right? And what I especially liked about it, what you did, is that I think you have a unique style and you embrace that, right? You're very, calculated and thoughtful and soft-spoken in a way, and I mean that in a really positive way, right? Because you're presenting a question or a series of questions, right, and answers, but the way in which you delivered it in a way that was cerebral, I thought was really effective. And so I think that in any presentation, I really liked how you embraced who you were, right, in the delivery of that content. I thought that was the most effective thing about what you said. So I thought that was really well done in a short amount of time. So I mean, I think in a short amount of time, it's easy to say, about the content, right? But I think in general, what I would encourage you to think about is when you're going to tell a story that has a big message, right? you need to set the stage for that big message first. And what you did is you filtered a lot of those big messages sort of intermittently, and that was in some cases difficult to follow, right? Whereas if you said, winter, here's 5 things why I implore you to love winter, right? Or why I think it's important. And then you use the remaining of your content to support that. That to me would have been a sort of more linear flow to follow. So, but I thought you did an awesome job in a really short amount of time. So, nice work, Brian. Awesome. Anyone gonna challenge winter?
I mean, like, I'll go.
I like it.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Hi, I'm Matt Benoit, and I'm going to be talking about why you should choose UNH. So first off, it's a great school for a great price. The Paul Business School is rated on Bloomberg Top 100 alongside some of the best schools in the nation, such as Harvard, Yale, and we're still in there, and it's at a much lower price than any of those schools. Second of all, the atmosphere at UNH is unlike anything. Everybody's friendly, like everybody, I'm not afraid to approach anyone and ask them for directions. Everyone's just a really great person. The faculty, the staff, and even the students. Not even the students, like, but everyone. Third of all, there's plenty of opportunities here. There's clubs, fraternities, and there's just lots of intramurals. You can do a bunch of things here, and I honestly think it's all about what you put in is what you're gonna get out. Because if you just come here and you don't apply yourself, and you don't take risks or do anything like that, then you're not gonna flourish here at UNH. But there's so many opportunities here that can allow you to grow as a person. Thank you.
Well done, Matt. Great work, man. Just like with Brian, it's hard to get up and tell a story in just a couple minutes of preparation, right? So I think you did an awesome job of that. So I think, like I said, a great takeaway in sort of preparing to tell a story is you had some real great points in there, like on par with Harvard and, you know, a great atmosphere, right? And I think when you're thinking about your user, right, or who you're presenting to, what you want to think about is what are the problems you're trying to educate them on, right? And so if you're saying, hey, you're a prospective student, right, you probably care about what are the best schools, what's the right atmosphere, right? So the points that you hit on there, I think you can set the stage for delivering those points. And it's just sort of rethinking about how you're telling that story. Just kind of similar to what we said to Brian, right? It's what are the big points you're going to make? And I think you want to sort of capture some attention by making those points early on. And then you can deliver sort of the backup for those after that. I thought you did a really good job, man, in a short amount of time. So nice work. All right, man.
All right, I'm Ben Daniels, and I'd like to talk about why choose UNH. There's various different reasons to choose UNH, but one of the most important ones is it's a very economical choice for what you're getting. First off, it has great academics. It was rated the 46th best public university in the United States. Along with that, it also has the top 20% for research and funding. This is astounding because it allows you great academic opportunities for anybody wanting to be a scientist all the way to a business major. It has many different opportunities such as clubs, fraternities, and just faculty members who are going to look out for you and seek out the best for your growth. Another thing is it has great food. It was ranked the 15th best college food in the nation. This is a great thing because it makes you feel homey coming into your first year in college. UNH offers various different things that are going to allow you to feel safe when you go to college, such as being one of the safest schools in the nation. Always having a emergency button in reach to make sure you're always feeling safe. And lastly, another thing it does well is giving back. One of the things it does is it has the highest sustainability rating in the United States. This is very important in the growing age of where the environment is at risk, and we want to partake in improving the climate.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Awesome job. That was great.
I'm just a nervous kid, so I try to throw myself in those situations.
I think first of all, guys, this is all about, guys and gals, this is all about doing exactly that, right? Yeah, it's all about the practice part of it and getting used to hearing yourself talk because it's unnatural for a lot of people, right? So I think there's a couple things I would say, right? The first is, I think similar to what we talked about with Matt, right? When you're thinking about telling a story, you had a lot of great points there, right? And nice work on the research, in a short amount of time, unless you knew all that. So I think the right way to sort of frame it is, hey, if I'm a student, and I'm a prospective student, here are some things that are really important to me, right? Here are things that I cared about. I wanted to be safe. I wanted good food. You know, I was interested in business or this, and here are some things that are really important to me. Now let me tell you why UNH is the school that you should think about if those things are important to you, right? So there's a way in which, like I said, I think we've talked about with everyone, and it's hard to do this in a short amount of time, but it's just a frame of mind is when you're trying to tell a story, right, you want to set the stage of that story in advance, okay? And then you can use sort of the points of presentation to back that up. You did a great job, man. You did a great job. Awesome work on Show Time. So, I want to, yeah, go.
Present again?
Yes,
As last person?
I think you can. Please.
Didn't want to interrupt.
No, please go. Francesco, right?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Get up there. All right.
So I chose to present on why to buy a certain phone. So I'm going to present a phone from a brand that I owned one of their phones, their first phone. So they threw out a new phone, and so I grabbed stuff all together. It's not launched yet, so it's like some leaking information. So why should you buy the OnePlus 5T? From this brand, no one's heard of it, and only early adopters actually decided. Okay, I'm back on OnePlus. Okay, so about OnePlus. They're a small brand. They were a startup in 2013, and they were so small they had to start with a VIP invite system. So you would get a message that said, okay, hey, you have 24 hours to buy a phone. Once you bought one, you would get another message within a few months saying, hey, you can tell your friend to buy a phone. So they grabbed up and they slowly grew the system, which is now a complete open market. And they did this to really create a community, to create like a sensation, kind of what Apple was able to do. Really bringing people to love their products and really understanding the needs of the people that were using them. So let's get to the stats. This is their new phone. It's nearly bezel-less, which has become extremely important lately. It has an aux port, which most phones now are losing, which is very attractive. It has the latest processor, so you're not losing any speed compared to all the other flagships out there. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM. There's only a couple other phones on the market. Samsung's only at 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, only in China, special versions. So all these phones have less specs compared to this phone. So you take pictures. You have great cameras here. You have a double camera on the back. You have a front camera on the front.
Is this part of the presentation?
No. Someone just called me.
I'm just kidding.
So front camera, and you have 2 rear cameras in the back. So you can get great lighting, have amazing pictures, high resolution. So, don't know who it is. And I'm super sorry. Best part of the phone. So we talked about the community, we talked about why it's really good. It has the most important features that people want nowadays. But it has quick charging. So forget those batteries that you bring along with you, bring your charging cable with you. You're gonna get 65% of your battery in 30 minutes. Right there. And then the price. We're talking a price that's uncomparable compared to Apple's new iPhone X, compared to Samsung's new Note 8. These phones have prices that are close to $1,000. Right now, talking about half that price. It's a good community. You still get your warranty. You got an international warranty. The phone is cross-compatible with all the carriers here in the States. Why not get it?
Nicely done. Francesco, awesome work, man. So a few things I'll say. First, what I really appreciated about the slides is that you kept the content really minimal, right? So you had a couple bullet points on each slide, and for me, what that allowed me to do was listen to you, right, as opposed to read. And I thought that was something that was really important, right? The feedback I would give you is that you start with this great question: why buy OnePlus, right? And then you talk about the company, right? Next, right? So where I felt like what you really wanted to say was, why buy OnePlus? Here's all this awesome stuff about it, right? Because that's probably what the user really cares about. I think you told that story, but just in a way that was a little disjointed. So I think when you're thinking about, and again for everyone, when you think about taking the listener through a journey, if you're posing questions, we talked about that, we want to pose big questions. We got to make sure that we give them a path to get that answer quickly. And if we skip off of that path, it becomes a little bit distracting, right?
So that history wasn't a good idea also.
It's not that it's not a good idea. I think it's the placement, right? Where do you put the placement? I think it's very relevant. But if you're gonna start by posing this important question, why do you want to buy this, right? And then you had this great competitive information. Look, this is how it's different than Apple and Samsung. All that info was in there. That's probably the why, right? And then the end maybe is,
And that could have been at the end.
yeah, right? It could be, but you want to make sure this is a real company, right? Or this is a company that you can stand behind. Here's the feedback on the company. So it's a lot to do in a short amount of time. So it's a nitpicky thing, but it's more about, and we talked about this with everyone, when you're leading people through a story, I think everyone did a great job of that, right? It's making sure that that story is linear. You're posing the question, you're pulling them through the process, and then if you have supporting points, just make sure they fall in line, in a way that's sort of calculated.
Okay,
Right.
so it's not. Okay.
Yeah, but I thought you did a great job in a short amount of time, and I loved the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, so great work. Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else?
Francesco, what was your first 1 + 1?
I got the 1. I got the 1, guys.
The 1
First
plus 1.
The
Wow.
1 + 1. I actually just swapped to the iPhone X, so
Oh.
it's because I had the cash.
Okay.
Because I had the cash.
But now I know it actually rings, too.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. So before we go, I'll give everyone one piece of feedback from watching everyone present, right? And it'll emphasize what's the importance of recording yourself, because you get put in a kind of uncomfortable situation up here, right? You either were asked to present a product you maybe weren't quite ready for, or you're asked to present on something that you had 5 minutes to think about. So that's difficult. And the intention was it was supposed to be a little bit difficult, right? Because what you learn, like I said, what happens when you get nervous is you do things that you don't expect, right? Like you tap your hands like this, right? Or you move around in ways that you don't think that you normally would. So those things happen when you're nervous, and that's sort of the point of when you're preparing for a presentation, right? I think the value in preparing in a way by recording yourself, it'll give you some insight into those things that'll really make a difference for you, right? Because again, we all have nervous habits, right? And we get to experience a little bit of that when you're put in a situation, especially that's a little bit, unnatural. So there's nothing wrong with having those. I talked about my legs shake, right? That exists for all of us. We want to really do a great job in presentations. That's why you want to watch yourself, because you pick up on those things and you see how they detract from how you're giving a presentation. So I give all of you a ton of credit for being here, because being great at delivering presentations requires work. And so I give you a ton of credit for being here to learn about that. Hope that it was helpful for you. Ian has my contact information, so as you guys are thinking about presentations and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. I thought everyone did an awesome job tonight. So give yourselves a hand.